Guys, today we will be learning multiple theories of intelligence. One of the most popular psychological attributes which has been of interest to psychologists is intelligence, right? Most of the psychologists, or even we, right, we always want to measure how much intelligent the other person is, including our family members, right? When you see your own family members, be it old generation, newer generation, or the people of same age group, you will also see when you just observe them that two people are not at all same in any way. Their intelligence level is different. They perform the same task in a different way. The other day, Seema had conducted a general mental ability test in her among her family members, where I'm sure the results were different. Not only because of the age gap, but if you conduct it within the same class, also you will see the results are different. And not just general mental ability test, but if you give a task, each person thinks differently. They are going to perform the task also differently. The way you perceive or understand or learn or think is again different. Now, already Vasudha in yesterday's class has taught us intelligence and definitions of intelligence. So I would just like to combine one, it is like intelligence is the global capacity to understand the world, think rationally, and use all the available resources effectively when faced with challenges. So now we will start with the theories of intelligence. Now, psychologists have proposed several theories of intelligence. Now, theories can be broadly classified as either representing a psychometric or structural approach or an information processing approach. So there are two approaches. They are structural approach and information processing approach. The psychometric approach considers intelligence as an aggregate of abilities, not just one ability. It is a combination or an aggregate of abilities. It expresses the individual performance in terms of a single index of cognitive abilities. On the other hand, the information processing approach describes the processes people use in intellectual reasoning and problem solving. So let us start with the first theory. In total, there are three theories which we will be learning in this unit. First is Guilford's structure of intellect theory. The second is by Gardner, that is multiple intelligence. And the last one is by Sternberg. So let us start with Guilford's structure of intellect theory. So this theory is a representation of psychometric approach. I told you there are two approaches. So this is a representation of psychometric approach to understand intelligent behavior of a person. Now, Joy Paul Guilford, that is J.P. Guilford, a United States psychologist, proposed the structure of intellect model, that is SI, in the year 1955, which was based on factor analysis. His interest in individual differences started from his childhood, when he observed the differences in ability among the members of his own family. Usually, whenever you think of an idea or you want to discover something, you will notice the first change you're going to notice within your own family members. So that's how each psychologist has discovered new things by observing their own family members or their own surroundings. In Guilford's structure of intellect, all mental abilities are conceptualized within a three-dimensional framework, that is 3D framework, which are operations, contents, and products. He said that intelligence consisted 180, that is 6 into 5 into 6, that is 180 different and independent skills. Each of these intellectual abilities or structures are interlinked. So there are totally 180 independent skills, which are again interdependent and interlinked. So we will start.
Ritu, give me a minute. Are you sharing something? I just see one screen on the shared one. Are you sharing
No,
it?
I'm not sharing anything.
Okay, thank you.
Ritika is sharing that.
Yeah. So we will start with the first one, that is operations. Now, what are operations? They're nothing but they are what the respondent does. Suppose you are a responder. So what you do, your actions, they are operations. These include cognition, memory, recording, divergent production, convergent production, and evaluation. So let us just go through one by one. First is cognition. Cognition is nothing but the ability to understand, comprehend, discover, and become aware of the information. The second is memory. Again, memory has got two types, that is recording and retention. The ability to encode and recall the information is memory. So encoding is nothing but converting from one form to another form. So the ability to encode and recall whenever you need, that is from your long term to, whenever you want to recall. So that is memory. Next is divergent production. The ability to generate multiple solutions to a problem, that is creativity. Divergent, that is multiple. So whenever we have a question, see now in statistics itself, in the last class, we saw that there is one question, but there are more than 2 or 3 ways of solving a problem. So that is divergent production, multiple solution to a single problem. That is also called as creativity. Next is convergent production. The ability to deduce a single solution to a problem, that is by following a rule or a problem solving method. For example, now you have a step-by-step process in mathematics or in any other subject. You cannot skip one step and go to the next. So you have to come methodologically, one by one. You have C programming, so you have steps in that. You can't skip one or else you will derive at the wrong answer. Next is evaluation. Evaluation is the ability to judge whether or not the information is accurate. So the information that you have in your mind, whether it is accurate or not. So you should have the ability to judge that. And you will be able to judge only if you have the understanding of the subject. Now the second is content. Content refers to the nature of materials or information on which intellectual operations are performed. Now these include visual, auditory, symbolic, semantic, and behavioral. The first one is visual. The information perceived through seeing, that is tangible objects. You can only see tangible objects, not intangible. So all the information that you see through your eyes is visual. Next is auditory. Information perceived through hearing, that is auditory. Next is symbolic. Information perceived as symbols or signs that have no meaning by themselves. Example, letters or numbers or musical notes. Like if I say letter A, is there a meaning in letter A? No, right? If I just say A, P, P, L, E. So all these letters, when you join together, it becomes a word. So that word has got a meaning. That apple has got a meaning. But if I just say letter A, it has got no meaning when it is a single entity. Or number 1 or any number for that matter, it has got no meaning when it is just single entity. The next is semantic. It is concerned with verbal meaning and ideas. So it is the information which is perceived in words or sentences. Now these could be oral, written, or again in the mind. See, while I'm telling you, you people are again thinking in your mind, right? So this is also semantic. And most of the time, this is abstract in nature. Abstract means something that you cannot see or perceive by your sense organs. For example, if I say honesty, can you see honesty? Can you touch? Can you feel? Can you taste? No, right? So that is abstract. Next is behavioral. Information perceived as acts of people, the way people behave. For example, information about people's behavior, attitudes, needs, etc. So now all of us are learning psychology. And actually, we want to learn psychology to understand all these attributes, people's behavior, that is their attitudes, needs, or motives. So that is behavior. Now, the third component is products, which refer to the form in which information is processed by the respondent. So in what form are you processing the information is what this refers to. So you are a respondent, you have an information. So how are you processing, or in which form are you processing the information? So products are also classified into units, classes, relations, systems, transformations, and implications. So the first one is units. Units represent a single item of knowledge or information, just a single item. Second is classes. So you already have a group. Again, you're dividing into classes. That is a set of units sharing common attributes. So it is a set of information or sentences. You're again dividing that into units. So that is classes. Relations. Units linked as opposites or in associations, sequences, or analogies. Now, whatever information you have, what do you try to do with them? You usually try to link them with something, the previous knowledge, whatever you have. Or suppose you have a word. Suppose the word is bad. You try to form, try to figure out an opposite word of that. What is it? Good. Again, in sequence. So you try to always link the information as opposites or associations. So you always try to compare with the external and internal information. The next is transformation. Transformation is how the knowledge is changing. It is changes, perspectives, conversions, or mutations to knowledge. Now you have an information. It always keeps changing. How? Your perspective keeps changing, right? Suppose we had certain perspectives or prejudgment or stereotyped or certain beliefs about certain things, but when we are learning this psychology now, our perspectives about those things are changing. Tomorrow also it is going to change because change is only constant. And you also try to convert them and mutate, which means it multiplies just like the virus is multiplying. So the information also multiplies. The last is implication. That is predictions, inferences, consequences, or anticipation of knowledge. So you predict, you also draw inferences or conclusions based on your data, like in statistics you do. Then again, consequences, you also know the consequences and anticipate or presume of knowledge. Now I can give you a collective example which is there in the textbook. So I've taken from the textbook. A subject is given a list of words to study and asked to recall them later. Suppose today I give you a certain list of certain words, and tomorrow or any day, like I will not inform you. So I ask you to recall them later. What am I asking you to recall? Words. So now the content of the scale is semantic, because semantic is nothing but related to words. As it involves words, so it is semantic. The operation, what is the operation here? It is memory, because I am asking you to recall, and memory is related to recall, not something else. And the product is the recall of words as units. Any doubt so far?
No.
Okay. So this theory is intended to be a general theory of human intelligence, basically. Its major application, besides educational research, has been in personnel selection and placement. So it is not only used in educational research, but also in selecting employees in an organization when you're recruiting the staff, when you're recruiting your employees. So let's move to the second theory, that is Gardner.
Why unit? Yeah. Why unit? Because it's each and every word, is it? A word is a unit, is it?
Yeah, the small set, just a single set.
Okay.
Just a single thing. Yeah, that is a unit. Anything.
Okay.
It could be anything.
Okay. Because it's a word, it's each word is a unit.
anything. You can consider any single entity as a unit.
Okay.
Ritu, can you
Suppose
take
you
an
have clothes.
example?
Seema, suppose you like, yeah, we girls have this one clothes, right? We have a sari, we have a blouse, we have a petticoat, right? So what is a single unit there? A sari is a single unit. You cannot call petticoat and your blouse also to be a unit. So each unit is a single entity. It's different, like just one single thing.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So moving
Maybe a
on.
meaningful thing, right? One thing which is meaningful.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Right.
Yes. The second theory is Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. See, when I say multiple intelligences, which means it is not one intelligence, it's more than one. So Howard Gardner proposed the theory of multiple intelligences. According to him, intelligence is not a single entity. Rather, distinct types of intelligence exist, which means different types of intelligences, all mixture. Each of these intelligences are independent of each other. This means if a person exhibits one type of intelligence, it does not necessarily indicate being high or low on other type of intelligences. Suppose somebody is good at musical intelligence, somebody is good at logical intelligence. It does not mean he is bad or good in the other intelligence. He can be equally good in other intelligence or equally bad in other intelligence. Someone's asking something.
Able to hear me?
Yeah, Srivali, can you take an example of applying the operation on a content and getting a product? Okay, you did not understand the example I gave. Srivali? Okay, we will come back to this later then. I'll just finish it off. Yeah. So each of these intelligences are independent of each other. This means if a person is good in one intelligence, he may also be good or equally good in other intelligences or equally bad in other intelligences. Gardner also put forth that different types of intelligences interact and work together to find a solution to a problem. Gardner's theory was groundbreaking because before he proposed a multiple intelligences, only logic and math were tested, right? Initially, if you have to test somebody's intelligence, we would just give them some kind of intelligence test based on their, math and logic. And not everybody can be good at math, right? Only a couple of them could be good at math. So this was a groundbreaking because he brought in a different kind of intelligence test. So Gardner's system created a more descriptive, multidimensional approach. Gardner's work helped to explain diverse learning styles. So he brought in various kind of learning styles and approaches, allowing for educational developments which have changed the way of teaching. So now this Gardner's theory of intelligences have been applying in various educational institutions by teachers and a lot of people to learn and to teach. So the students are also able to understand better and teachers have improvised their skills in teaching. Gardner states that most people have at least 9 of these intelligences, but that in some people, one intelligence may dominate and in other people, the intelligence blend. See, there are 9 kinds of intelligences. In some people, one person can be good at math and he may not be good in 8 other things. He can be average or below average, but he may not be equally good. But on the other hand, some people are good in 4-5 skills, and what they do, they try to blend. It's like 1 + 1 is equal to 3. That's called synergy. So they actually blend and they bring positive results. So Gardner studied extremely talented people who had shown exceptional abilities in their respective areas and described these 9 kinds of intelligences, which I will be describing one by one. So he didn't randomly go select people. He actually selected people from different fields, and then he derived at all these kind of intelligence theories. So the first one is linguistic intelligence. skills involved in the production and use of language, that is linguistic. It is the ability to use language fluently and flexibly to express one's thinking and understanding others. So the way you understand and the way you think. Persons high on this intelligence are word smart. So you're good with words. Whoever dominates this intelligence is good with words. They can play, they can manipulate with all the words. These people learn foreign languages also easily. You know, foreign languages need not be any other country's language. In India itself, we have got a lot of languages. So they have this great aptitude, you know, to learn languages quickly. So people good with linguistic intelligences, they are quick to learn other languages as well. So careers for these people are writers, lawyers, policemen, poets, philosophers, journalists, politicians, and teachers. So these people usually dominate linguistic intelligence. Who are the people? They are writers, lawyers, policemen, poets, philosophers, journalists, politicians, and teachers, because they have to play with the words, they have to manipulate. So they have to get involved in this linguistic intelligence. The second is logical mathematical intelligence. See, the word itself explains the meaning. It is related to logic and maths. So skills in scientific thinking. What is scientific thinking? Again, in order, that is sequential, and problem solving. This intelligence consists of the capacity to analyze problems logically. It's like, suppose I give you an exam and you have an objective type questions. Like in general ability test, we had objective type questions, right? So some of us, you know, maybe would have done a guesswork, right? A, B, C, D, we would have marked something, but it is not like that. You should actually logically derive at the answer. You should actually know how you derived at the answer. So problem solving logically, carrying out mathematical operations, and investigate uses scientifically. So if I ask you, okay, fine, just give me the answer. So you have derived at this answer. Can you explain me? So you should be a, you know, be in that position to explain to me how you derived at an answer. Or theorems, you see, you take example of theorems. If you don't understand the concept, you can't get the right answer. So they engage in abstract reasoning and can manipulate symbols to solve mathematical problems. So no matter how many ever times I change the numbers or manipulate the numbers, you know the concept, you are good at math, you're really good, your intelligence level in mathematics is excellent. No matter how many ever changes I make, you will still be able to derive at the right answer. Scientists, physicists, mathematicians, logicians, engineers, doctors, economists, and philosophers dominate this logical mathematical intelligence. The next is musical intelligence. See, musical means somebody pretty good at math. I mean, not math, music. Sensitivity to musical rhythms and patterns. It is the capacity to produce, that is, to produce music, to sing, create, and manipulate musical patterns. So first, you start with Saregamapa. Once you learn that, once you practice that, you start creating, you know, in your own way. You try to actually manipulate later. So when the teacher is teaching, later you also come and you also try on your own. You will be able to do that only if you're able to produce and create. So persons high on this intelligence are very sensitive to sounds, vibrations, rhythms, pitch, meter, tone, melody, or timbre. Now, suppose there's a song which is played. Most of us will just be focused on the, you know, lyrics. But people who are actually good with musical intelligence, they will be, their focus will be on the music, you know, how the music is. They're actually going to find out who the musician is, if they really like it, because they understand the variations, they understand the sounds, they understand the rhythm or pitch. Instrumentalists, singers, conductors, DJs, that is disc jockeys, orators, writers, and composers, they dominate musical intelligence. The next is bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Body itself says that it is using your body. So using whole or portions of the body flexibly and creatively. They are generally good at physical activities such as sports or dance. Now you see Soundarya, I mean, she's good at dance. If I and you, if we are non-dancers, if we think of dancing, can we do it? Yes, it will, require a lot of skills, but certain people are naturally good at it. One, even if you're not good at it, you should actually, uh, be inclined towards that. Only then you will be able to learn. They often learn best by doing something physically rather than by reading or hearing about it. Now, if Soundarya or okay, chalo, if we want to learn dance, can you just read a book on dance and learn dance? No, right? If you want to learn yoga, again, that's utilizing, your body. You want to learn cricket, you want to learn football. Can you just read theory or read just certain books about it or just read the rules of the game and then learn? No, right? You have to go to the pitch, you have to go to the ground. Only then you're going to be perfect in that. So that is bodily kinesthetic intelligence. So athletes, dancers, actors, they can't just keep reading the scripts, they have to perform. Sports persons, gymnasts, musicians, surgeons, doctors, builders, police, soldiers, all these people, they possess this kind of intelligence. What kind of intelligence? Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. The next is spatial intelligence. Skills in forming visual images and patterns. See, there are some people, while you talk to them, they're already having a mind movie played, in their mind or brain. Suppose I'm talking something, some people are just listening. Some of them, they can actually imagine or visualize. So some are really expert. They can accurately just understand what we are saying. They can relate to it. It refers to the ability involved in forming, using, and transforming mental images. The person high on this intelligence can easily represent the spatial world in their mind. Pilots, sailors, sculptors, painters, architects, interior decorators, and surgeons are likely to have highly developed spatial intelligence. Moving on to next, that is interpersonal intelligence. This is the skill of understanding the motives, feelings, and behaviors of other people so as to bond into a comfortable relationship with others. That is what all of us are trying to do, right? We want to study psychology to understand all these attributes of the people. Only then we will be able to make a comfortable bond or relationship with others. Now they tend to be extroverts, usually extroverts, because people who is an introvert who doesn't talk, will you actually approach them? No, right? You will definitely approach a person who talks. So they usually tend to be extroverts and communicate effectively and empathize easily with others. They should be empathetic. Otherwise, they can never understand your problems. And maybe they can be leaders or followers too. They enjoy discussion and debates. They actually take part in all these speaking, activities. There's the psychologists, counselors, politicians, social workers, religious leaders, managers, teachers, and salespeople possess this intelligence, right? When I say salespeople, sometimes, it so happens that you don't want to buy a product, but somebody comes and within 2 minutes he just sells, and later you realize that why did you even buy this product? Because they are really trained or they are really good in this interpersonal intelligence. And teachers, you are very well aware. Next is intrapersonal intelligence. It is right exactly in contrast with interpersonal. So it is nothing but the awareness of one's own feelings, not somebody else's, your own feelings and motives and desires. So if you are aware of your own feelings, motives, and desires, congratulations, you have this interpersonal intelligence. See, whenever you go for an interview, there is one question which an interviewer always asks. And most of us, we give a memorized answer from an internet, right? If they ask you, tell me something about yourself, most of us actually don't know ourselves. Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? We have no idea. Basically, we have no idea. See, now if I ask you, where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Can you say if you're going to be alive? No, right? So we don't know. We simply read certain stories from the internet and just paste there, copy paste. So somebody who understands their feelings, motives, and desires are good with intrapersonal intelligence. Now, this refers to the knowledge of one's internal strengths and weaknesses. And using that knowledge effectively, they are able to relate to others. So if I know my strengths and weaknesses, if I understand myself, my desires, feelings, motives, maybe I can easily relate to people. You know, I think most of you know Sadhguru, right? Isha Foundation Sadhguru. So whenever he talks, you always feel that, yeah, you can relate to him, though you don't know him. So some people, yeah. So some people are really good at it, because they understand themselves. Now, when you see writers, kindly mute yourself, who's this? Yeah, when you read a book, say you have never met the author, you have never met a writer, never. But do you see that you're actually able to relate? You're actually into that picture, into that story. Why? Because they're able to relate to you, and they're able to write and deliver such, great books because they understand themselves. If you cannot understand yourself, you can never understand anybody else. Persons high on this ability have finer sensibilities regarding their identity. So you are aware of who you are, why you exist, and what is the meaning of life? What is your purpose in life? Philosophers, spiritual leaders, psychologists again, theologians, lawyers, writers, and meditators. These are the people who actually dominate intrapersonal intelligence. The next is naturalistic intelligence. When you hear naturalistic, what do you understand by that? Naturalistic means nature or nurturing, which again relates to one's natural surroundings, right? Not artificial, natural surrounding, which has life, that is flora and fauna. So if you're sensitive to trees, if you are empathetic, you don't simply go unnecessarily and cut the trees. Congratulations. You have that kind of intelligence. You also take some actions to protect the environment, protect the wildlife. Yeah. So you have that naturalistic intelligence. Hunters, farmers, tourists, botanists, zoologists, naturalists, gardeners, and bird watchers possess more of naturalistic intelligence when compared to other people. The last is existential intelligence. Sensitivity and capacity to tackle deep questions about human existence, such as what is the meaning of life? Why do we die? Why are we even alive? The ability to contemplate, that is to think deeply and carefully, or questions beyond sensory data, something that our senses can't understand. You just can't see something beyond what you can see, something beyond what you can understand and hear. So these questions asked by these people, not everybody thinks like this, right? And you should also know the answers. You should be able to discover, right? So the cosmologists, philosophers, meditators, or yogis, or astrologers, all these people dominate existential intelligence field. Any doubts so far? I hope nobody's sleeping. I asked everybody to wash their faces and sit.
No,
No,
doubt.
very clearly
No
explained. Nice,
Yeah.
it was really good.
Okay, let's continue. The theory of multiple intelligence proposes a major transformation in the way our schools are run. Many teachers utilize multiple intelligences in their teaching philosophy and work to integrate Gardner's theory into classroom. So many teachers are actually applying this theory into the classroom. to make their teaching more efficient and effective. So now the last theory is Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence. Triarchy means three, right? So there are three components. Again, they will have subcomponents in them. So Robert Jeffrey Sternberg is an American psychologist and psychometrician. He proposed the triarchic theory of intelligence in the year 1985. This theory attempts to understand the human intelligence in terms of distinct components, that is different components, rather than a single entity. So he didn't combine everything in one. So he just divided into three components, again further divided into subcomponents. Sternberg views intelligence as the ability to adapt, to shape, and select environment to accomplish one's goals and those of one's society and culture. So what is intelligence according to him? The ability to change or adapt or shape. See, if you do not have the ability to change, then you cannot survive anywhere, right? You can't change the situation, you can't change the environment. So basically you have to change yourself to survive, or you have to shape, or you have to choose or select the environment to accomplish your goals and your society's goals. Sternberg argued that intelligent tests were wrong to ignore creativity at first place. See, usually, earlier what happened? So when the psychologists actually developed certain intelligence tests, creativity was completely neglected, right? Later on, Sternberg realized actually, if you do not include creativity, intelligence is not wrong, it is actually incomplete without creativity. So creativity is one of the main aspect. According to Sternberg's triarchic theory, there are three basic types of intelligence. They are componential, experiential, and contextual. They are, I'll repeat, componential, experiential, and contextual. So first one is componential intelligence. That's the first type. I'll be asking you questions. Not you people won't be asking me today. Yeah. Componential or analytical intelligence is the analysis of information to solve problems. Again, it is related to mathematics. Persons high on this ability to think analytically and critically and succeed in schools, they are referred as book smart. In your language or Prahash's language, first bench people. So this intelligence again has three components. Which intelligence? Componential intelligence has three subcomponents, which serves a different purpose or different function. First is the knowledge acquisition component. So what do you do first? Anybody? You can take your own example. So first you acquire the knowledge, right? So first is the knowledge acquisition component, which is responsible for learning. If you do not acquire the knowledge, you can't learn. So this is responsible for learning and acquisition of the ways of doing things. First, you have to learn, and then you have to acquire the ways of doing things. The way you encode, combine, and compare information is what this knowledge acquisition component means. The second is the meta component or a higher order component, which involves planning. So this involves planning concerned with what to do and how to do. So in the first function, that is knowledge acquisition component, you have already acquired the knowledge. So in the second, that is meta component, now with that knowledge or information, now you will think, okay, what to do with this and how to do. So this meta component also controls, monitors, and evaluates cognitive processing. These are the executive functions. You have to execute, to order and organize. Now you have a knowledge, right? You have an information. Now you have to organize that. And organize performance and knowledge acquisition components. So whatever information you have, acquired in the first function, now you will be organizing those information in meta component. Now the third component is performance component, which involves actually doing things. They execute strategies assembled by the meta components. Now you already have the strategies, which you have assembled or, filed or, you have organized now. Next is you have to execute. They are the basic operations involved in any cognitive act. They enable us to encode stimuli, hold information in short-term memory, make calculation, perform mental calculation, then mentally compare different stimuli and retrieve information from long-term memory. So what do you do in this? See, you have an information, right? In your mind, you have some kind of knowledge. So that is encode stimuli. Now you're holding information in your short term. Right now it is in short-term memory. What do? You make calculation. Then you perform mental calculation, further calculations. Then you also compare with the previous one. Whatever new information you are acquiring, you also compare. You always compare. It is the human tendency. Even if I say or not, you're always going to compare. So you mentally compare different stimuli, that is different information that you have received from the environment, and retrieve information from long-term memory. So you also have previous information or knowledge in your long-term memory. So you recall or retrieve them whenever in need. So we learned componential intelligence. That was the first intelligence. Under that, there were three subcomponents, that is knowledge acquisition, meta component, performance component. Now moving on to the second component, that is experiential or creative intelligence. It is involved in using past experiences creatively to solve new problems or novel problems. So experiential, which means experience. So you will have experience only if you have some previous knowledge or past knowledge, right? So how effectively you're utilizing that past information or knowledge to solve a present task or a new task, that ability. Or it is the ability to successfully deal with new and unusual or unexpected situations by drawing on existing knowledge and skill. Sternberg considers it as experiential aspect of intelligence because it reflects how an individual connects the internal world to external reality. What is internal world? You already have certain information in your mind. That is your internal world. What is the external reality? Reality that is different, right? That is still not there. That is a new one. So you're actually comparing and connecting your existing knowledge that is already in your mind with the new ones that you're going to receive, and then you're going to take it if you want to. Role of experience is divided into two parts, just like subcomponents, how we learned in the previous component. So the role of experience is divided into two parts, that is novelty or new and automation. What is novelty or new? A novel or a new situation is one that you have never experienced before. Obviously, something that is new, you have no idea of, right? Like Corona, you didn't know how to deal with it, right? Most of us were not addicted to stay at home. Now we are quite comfortable being at home. Now, because we have learned how to tackle to be at home and to tackle with the people or deal with the people of our own family members. Yeah. The second is automation. A task that has been performed multiple times and now it needs no effort to do is automation. Something that we have repeatedly doing, right? All these years. Brushing teeth, we have learned that's the initial thing which we remember. Second, you learn cycling, driving, all these things. So multiple times you failed, and you succeeded, and now you can do it anytime. So this is actually, this information is already fed in your subconscious mind. So you don't have to recall it, just automatically your muscles remember. Even if you have a short-term memory loss, your muscles do remember. So you do not forget swimming, cycling, and certain other things. Once a process is automatized, it can be run in parallel with the same or other processes, like multitasking. Suppose you're cooking food, right? You can also watch TV. That is also multitasking. See, if you're not good at cooking, I'll tell you what, don't try. This is a stunt. You're going to burn your hand. Trust me. Yeah. So you should really be good at it. So being skilled in one component, that is novelty or automation, did not necessarily mean that you are skilled in the other component as well. You may be skilled in both or you may not be skilled in both. So the last component is contextual intelligence. So what is the first thing we learned? That is componential intelligence. Under that, we learned knowledge acquisition, meta component, and performance component. What was the second one? That is experiential or creative intelligence. Under that, we learned novelty and automation. Now we will be learning the last, that is the third one, that is contextual intelligence. Contextual or practical intelligence involves the ability to deal with environmental demands encountered or faced on a daily basis. So today you have a problem, you're dealing with it today. Tomorrow you have a problem, you're dealing with tomorrow. So as and when the problem comes, the ability how you deal with it. So that is contextual intelligence. It is also called as street smartness or business sense. The persons high on this aspect easily adapt to their present environment or select a more favorable environment than the existing one, or modify the environment itself to fit their needs. See, I mean, very funny it is anyways. So the first one is you change yourself. So anyway, okay, this is also called as, I combined it and I told it, I told all the three sub-components in one sentence. So I will actually tell it one by one again. So one is adaptation. That is the first sub-component. So it is the ability to change yourself. So Bangalore's weather is like this right now. You can't change the weather, no? So you have to change your body. Suppose you are allergic to dust or something and it is summer season, you can't do anything. You have to just increase your, work on your immunity. Now this COVID time, you have to improve your immunity to change according to the environment. The second is shaping. You change the environment, which means it's like you can change to a certain extent. It is called shaping. You just give some shape. You're not completely, pushing it away. Suppose it is too hot. What do? You switch on the AC or fan or cooler according to your needs. You cannot change the environment. No, it is hot. It is hot. It is 40 degrees. So it is 40 degrees. You can't do anything. So just to make yourself feel better, you just put on AC so that you feel better. You feel, oh, the environment is a little better. Yeah. The last is selection. So you select a more favorable environment than the existing one. So you say, oh, I want to go to Kulu Manali. It's too hot here. So you change the environment itself. So you change your place, right? By changing the place, you're changing the environment. So these three I combined in one sentence. I would like to repeat. That is, persons high on this aspect easily adapt to their present environment or select a more favorable environment than the existing one, or modify the environment itself to fit in their needs. Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence represents the information processing approach. See, initially I said there are two types of approaches, right? So this is the second one. So this Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence is actually a representation of information processing approach to understand intelligence. According to him, people do not need to be high in all three types of intelligences in order to be successfully intelligent. Instead, you should actually work on your strengths and weaknesses. Suppose you're good at something. You can actually do that, you can master that skill by doing it multiple times. Suppose you're bad at something or weak in something. If you really want to be good at it, yes, you can start from today and you can again improve. So it all depends on you. So if you're weak in some area, you can always improve in that area and overcome your weakness. That's it. Oh my God, I guess everybody's sleeping. Shit.
Not at all.
Not really,
No,
Ritu.
no. Not really, it seems.
Matlab half, you're sleeping half. Okay, you can
No,
stop the recording, Ritika.
It takes time for us